a frozen river crossing point in eastern sector. 0320 hours during clear freezing night. Temperature -21°C with no wind. Ice thickness measured at 40 to 50 centimeters across river width of 120 meters. A Russian mechanized force attempting night river crossing to outflank Ukrainian defensive positions and establish bridgehead on opposite bank. 534 personnel organized in mechanized assault group, 347 infantry in mechanized platoons, 91 vehicle crews operating 39 BMP-2 infantry fighting vehicles, 52 heavy weapons specialists with anti-tank and mortar systems, 44 command and support staff. Force was tasked with crossing frozen river under cover of darkness, seizing positions on opposite bank, and holding bridgehead for follow-on forces to exploit breakthrough in Ukrainian defensive line. Ice reconnaissance conducted over previous week confirmed thickness sufficient to support BMP-2 weight of 14.6 tons. Equipment represented massive investment. 39 BMP-2 infantry fighting vehicles valued at $520,000 each, totaling $20.3 million. Each BMP required 3-person crew trained over 8 months at combined cost of $84,000 per crew. 39 crews represented $3.3 million in crew training investment. Infantry carried modern equipment, including AK-74M rifles at $1,300 each, encrypted radios at $2,800 each, night vision devices at $4,200 each, winter gear and body armor at $1,400 each. Average equipment value per soldier was $10,100. 534 personnel represented $5.4 million in personal equipment. Heavy weapons included modern Kornet EM anti-tank systems valued at $82,000 each, upgraded PKP Pecheneg machine guns at $6,500 each, 2 B-14 Podnos mortars at $23,000 each, additional ammunition and specialized equipment. Total equipment value exceeded $32.8 million. Personnel training investment exceeded equipment value. Infantry required 6 months basic training at $42,000 per soldier. 347 infantry represented $14.6 million. BMP crew members required additional 6 months specialized training at $38,000. 91 crew members represented $3.5 million. Heavy weapons specialists required additional training costing $18,000 per person. 52 specialists represented $936,000. Officers and senior sergeants represented combined 114 years military service and training valued at approximately $9.1 million. Total personnel training investment exceeded $28.1 million. Ukrainian forces had monitored Russian reconnaissance activities for 4 days using thermal drones and electronic surveillance. Ice thickness measurements were observed and analyzed. Ukrainian engineers assessed ice structural integrity, identifying weak zones where underwater currents prevented uniform freezing, creating thinner sections invisible from surface. Plan utilized artillery strikes targeting ice surface rather than vehicles directly. High explosive shells would fracture ice, creating catastrophic structural failure, causing vehicles to plunge through. Timing was critical. Allowing maximum vehicles on ice before triggering collapse would maximize casualties and equipment losses. Ukrainian investment in operation was minimal. Surveillance required 8 days drone operations, costing approximately $34,000. Artillery ammunition allocated was 96 rounds valued at $51,000. Engineer analysis and planning consumed 1 week staff time valued at approximately $22,000. Ice structural modeling using computer analysis cost minimal additional resources. Total Ukrainian operational investment was $107,000, excluding equipment and personnel already assigned to units. 23 minutes after Russian force began crossing and artillery struck ice, 302 personnel would be casualties, 234 dead from drowning in icy water or hypothermia after immersion, 68 critically wounded from crushing injuries, hypothermia, and blast effects dying within hours. 232 survived but with severe cold injuries, psychological trauma, and unit cohesion completely destroyed. 23 BMP-2 infantry fighting vehicles would be total losses resting on river bottom in 4 to 6 meters of water unrecoverable. Crossing operation would fail catastrophically, with bridgehead never established and mechanized force effectively destroyed. Financial losses would exceed $52 million, accounting for equipment losses, personnel training investment, medical costs, and replacement expenses, with long-term disability costs adding approximately $18 million over extended period. This happened days ago during period of sustained freezing, creating false confidence in ice load-bearing capacity. River remains partially frozen, with vehicle hulks visible through ice in some locations. Strategic implications of ice crossing vulnerabilities continue affecting winter operational planning. This is what occurred during those 23 minutes when frozen river became death trap. River crossings represent fundamental military challenge throughout history. Bridges are targets requiring protection. Fording requires shallow depths. Boats need preparation time. Winter ice crossing appears to solve problem. Natural bridge forming from freezing temperatures requiring no engineering preparation or vulnerable bridge structures. However, ice thickness varies unpredictably based on water flow, depth variations, underwater springs, and freezing conditions. Visual inspection cannot determine load capacity reliably. Weight limits are probabilistic, not absolute. Ice that supports one vehicle may fail under next identical vehicle due to accumulated stress or localized weakness. Modern armored vehicles represent extreme ice loading challenge. BMP-2 weighs 14.6 tons distributed over track contact area of approximately 4 square meters. Ground pressure exceeds 3.6 tons per square meter. Ice engineers calculate minimum safe thickness for this loading at 60 centimeters under ideal conditions. Uniform ice, static loading, safety margin included. Russian reconnaissance measured 40 to 50 centimeters thickness. This represented marginal capacity requiring perfect conditions and assuming measurements were accurate and representative. Ukrainian engineers analyzing Russian ice measurements identified critical vulnerabilities. River sections selected for crossing had underwater current from tributary joining 50 meters upstream. Current prevented uniform ice formation, creating laminated structure with thinner, weak layers between thicker sections. Surface appeared uniform, but internal structure was compromised. Additionally, daytime temperatures previous week had reached -2 Celsius, warm enough to create surface melting that refroze overnight, creating weak bonded layers. Ice appeared adequate from surface inspection, but structural integrity was significantly degraded. Artillery targeting strategy exploited ice structural vulnerabilities. Rather than attempting direct hits on moving vehicles, difficult at night and wasteful of ammunition, Ukrainian plan called for creating fracture lines through ice using high explosive rounds detonating on surface. Blast overpressure would propagate through ice, creating stress fractures. Multiple shells landing in pattern would create intersecting fracture network. When stressed beyond structural limits, fractured ice would fail catastrophically, causing vehicles and personnel to plunge into water below. Russian force assembled at river's edge at 0240 hours. Infantry dismounted from BMP vehicles and began crossing on foot first, standard doctrine to verify ice capacity before committing vehicles. Lead infantry platoon of 38 soldiers crossed successfully, reaching opposite bank at 0253. Ice showed no signs of failure under distributed weight of individual soldiers. Commander assessed ice as adequate and ordered vehicle crossing to commence. At 0305, first BMP began crossing. Driver maintained steady 5 kilometers per hour speed as instructed, slow enough to minimize dynamic loading, but fast enough to prevent ice from adjusting to weight. Track noise echoed across frozen landscape. Infantry watched from both banks, monitoring for any signs of ice failure. First BMP reached midpoint at 0307, showing no problems. Ice appeared solid. Second through sixth BMPs began crossing at 30-meter intervals, creating staggered formation. By 0315, 6 vehicles were on ice simultaneously, with lead vehicle approaching opposite bank. 7th through 12th vehicles entered ice from departure bank. Formation was strung across 120-meter river width, with vehicles distributed to prevent concentrated loading. Ukrainian observation posts tracked vehicle positions using thermal imaging, showing clear signatures against frozen river background. Fire control calculated optimal timing for artillery strike. Maximum vehicles on ice concentrated in kill zone while avoiding premature warning. At 0317, with 11 BMPs distributed across river, artillery fire mission was executed. 96 shells were fired from 6 guns positioned 8 kilometers away. Time of flight was 34 seconds. Shells were programmed for surface detonation, creating maximum blast overpressure transfer into ice. Impact pattern covered entire crossing area with shells landing in grid, creating comprehensive fracture network. At 0317 and 34 seconds, first shells impacted ice surface. High explosive detonations created blast overpressure exceeding 20 pounds per square inch at ice surface. Overpressure propagated through ice structure, creating compression stress. Ice fractured along existing weak layers and crystalline boundaries. Surface detonations created crater holes punching through to water below. Subsequent shells landing nearby intersected fractures, creating expanding web of structural failure. Crews inside BMPs felt impacts through vehicle suspension and heard detonations. Some drivers attempted accelerating to reach shore before ice failed. Others stopped attempting to minimize dynamic loading. Decisions were made individually in seconds without coordination. Some correct, others fatal, all ultimately insufficient against ice structural collapse already in progress. At 0318, ice began catastrophic failure. Fracture network had created isolated plates no longer structurally connected. Vehicle weight exceeded individual plate capacity. Ice tilted under vehicle weight, creating moment force accelerating failure. Plates fractured into smaller pieces no longer capable of supporting any significant load. Within 3 seconds, continuous ice surface became jumbled collection of ice chunks floating in river current. First BMP to plunge through was Vehicle 7 positioned at midpoint of river. Ice fractured underneath, creating hole approximately 20 meters diameter. Vehicle tilted forward as ice collapsed beneath front tracks. 14.6 tons dropping into water created massive displacement wave. Vehicle sank through hole entering water at 45-degree angle. Inside BMP during plunge, crew and passengers experienced violent motion and impact. Forward tilt threw personnel forward against equipment and bulkheads. Hitting water created deceleration from 5 kilometers per hour to 0 in less than 1 second, equivalent to low-speed crash. Then sinking began. BMP-2 is not designed for swimming or flotation in combat configuration. Empty vehicle has marginal positive buoyancy. Loaded with ammunition, fuel, equipment, and 9 personnel, vehicle has significant negative buoyancy. Upon entering water, vehicle sank immediately, descending toward river bottom 4.6 meters below surface. Water entering vehicle was catastrophic emergency. River water temperature was -2 Celsius, below freezing due to salinity and flow preventing ice formation. Contact with water this cold creates instant physiological shock. Gasping reflex, hyperventilation, rapid heartbeat, blood pressure spike. Swimming ability degrades within seconds as cold numbs extremities. Consciousness can be lost in minutes from hypothermia. Survival time in water this temperature is approximately 15 minutes maximum before fatal hypothermia. But that assumes rescue and rewarming. Trapped inside sinking vehicle, survival time was measured in minutes. Emergency egress from sinking BMP is theoretically possible, but requires specific conditions. Hatches must be operable. Personnel must not be injured from impact. Water must not be entering too rapidly. Personnel must remain calm enough to execute emergency procedures. In this incident, none of these conditions existed. Hatches designed to open outward against air pressure were nearly impossible to open against water pressure. As vehicles sank, water pressure increased approximately 430 pascals per meter of depth. At 4 meters depth, pressure differential exceeded 1,700 pascals, equivalent to 170 kilograms force on hatch area. Opening hatch required overcoming this pressure, impossible for individuals inside. Water entered through hatches not properly sealed, ventilation systems, and battle damage from artillery. Entry rate increased as vehicle sank and pressure differential grew. Within 30 seconds, crew compartment was flooded. Personnel in complete combat gear with body armor, weapons, ammunition, and winter clothing had 0 buoyancy. Gear weight exceeded 100 kilograms, creating negative buoyancy, pulling soldiers down rather than up. Some personnel attempted removing heavy gear underwater to gain buoyancy. Fine motor control fails within seconds in near-freezing water. Fingers become numb and unresponsive. Buckles and fasteners cannot be operated. Helmet chin straps cannot be released. Body armor cannot be unbuckled. Attempts to remove gear consumed oxygen and energy while achieving minimal results. Most drowned wearing full equipment. Others attempted finding air pockets inside sinking vehicle. BMP interior has no significant void spaces when flooded. Small air pockets might exist temporarily, but were insufficient for sustained breathing. Carbon dioxide from breathing accumulated in pockets, making air toxic within minutes. Some personnel died from carbon dioxide poisoning in air pockets before drowning or hypothermia. Vehicle reached river bottom approximately 45 seconds after plunging through ice. Bottom was soft silt, allowing vehicle to settle partially buried. Interior was completely flooded. All 9 personnel inside were dead or dying from drowning, hypothermia, or trauma. Bodies remained trapped inside for recovery operations that would take weeks to organize. Vehicles 8 through 11 plunged through ice within 10 seconds of Vehicle 7 as fracture propagated along river. Each sinking was similar. Ice collapse, vehicle plunge, water ingress, crew trapped. 23 personnel drowned in Vehicle 8. Infantry fighting Vehicle 9 carried only crew after infantry had dismounted. 3 deaths. Vehicle 10 had 8 passengers. 11 total deaths. Vehicle 11 was command variant with additional communication equipment and 6 personnel. 9 deaths. Ice fracture continued propagating toward both banks as additional artillery shells landed, creating new fractures intersecting existing failures. Vehicles positioned closer to banks attempted emergency acceleration, reaching shore before ice beneath them failed. Some succeeded through combination of distance, timing, and luck. Others accelerated onto fractured ice that collapsed under dynamic loading from rapid movement. Vehicle 12 accelerated toward departure bank attempting escape. Ice appeared solid ahead. At 4 meters from shore, ice fractured under accelerated loading. Front tracks punched through, causing vehicle to tilt violently forward. Rear of vehicle remained on ice, creating bridge position. Crew attempted emergency egress through rear hatches, escaping before vehicle completed sinking. 7 of 9 personnel escaped. 2 remained trapped and drowned. Vehicles 1 through 5 had nearly reached opposite bank when ice began failing. Distance to shore was less than 20 meters. Drivers accelerated, attempting to reach solid ground. Vehicle 1 reached ice edge and successfully climbed onto bank using track traction. Vehicle 2 followed immediately behind and also succeeded. Vehicle 3 hit weakened ice 5 meters from bank. Ice fractured, but vehicle momentum carried it forward enough that front tracks reached solid ground while rear tracks were in water. Crew and passengers evacuated successfully before vehicle was fully submerged. Vehicles 4 and 5 experienced complete ice failure 10 meters from bank. Both plunged through, creating massive holes. Water depth near bank was shallower, approximately 3 meters. Vehicles hit bottom hard enough to injure personnel from impact. Water flooding was rapid, but shallower depth meant roof hatches were only 2 meters underwater. Crew and passengers attempted emergency egress against water pressure and succeeded in some cases. Vehicle 4 had 5 survivors from 9 personnel. Vehicle 5 had 4 survivors from 8 personnel. Infantry on opposite bank who had crossed earlier attempted rescue operations, moving toward ice edge to assist survivors. Ice near edges was more stable with better contact to shore. Some infantry ventured onto ice to reach personnel struggling in water. One sergeant reached Vehicle 5 and pulled 2 survivors from water. Another corporal attempted reaching Vehicle 4, but fell through thin ice himself, requiring rescue. Rescue attempts were brave, but largely ineffective. Water temperature killed within minutes, and few personnel surfaced close enough to shore to be reached. Artillery continued firing throughout crossing attempt, engaging vehicles on both banks and personnel attempting rescue. High explosive rounds landed among vehicles waiting to cross, destroying 3 BMPs outright and damaging 4 others. Cluster munitions targeted infantry concentrations, killing dismounted soldiers and preventing organized rescue operations. Fire mission continued for 8 minutes until no viable targets remained. By 0328, 13 BMPs had plunged through ice and sunk. 5 were destroyed on banks by artillery. 4 successfully crossed before ice failed. 17 vehicles never attempted crossing, turning back when catastrophe became apparent. Personnel casualties were catastrophic. 173 drowned trapped inside vehicles, 61 drowned attempting escape but succumbing to hypothermia or exhaustion, 34 killed by artillery, 27 died from hypothermia after water exposure despite reaching shore. Ice over vehicle locations began refreezing within hours as temperatures remained well below zero. Within 24 hours, river surface appeared continuous again with vehicle silhouettes barely visible through clear ice. Recovery operations were impossible. Cutting through ice to reach vehicles 4 to 6 meters underwater in freezing conditions with current was not feasible. Vehicles and bodies remained on river bottom, permanently becoming underwater monuments to disaster. Casualty assessment revealed complete force destruction, 234 confirmed dead from drowning, bodies recovered from shore, floating downstream, or visible inside vehicles through ice. 68 critically wounded from hypothermia, crushing injuries during sinking, and blast effects from artillery died within 4 hours despite medical treatment. Severe hypothermia caused cardiac arrest, brain damage, multi-organ failure. Medical facilities were overwhelmed and lacked equipment for rewarming critically hypothermic patients. 232 survivors suffered severe injuries and trauma. Many had frostbite from water exposure requiring amputations. Cold water immersion caused tissue damage even in brief exposure. Others suffered hypothermia complications, including pneumonia and organ damage requiring extended hospitalization. Most were psychologically devastated from witnessing mass drowning of comrades and experiencing near-death terror. Equipment losses were catastrophic and unrecoverable. 23 BMP-2 infantry fighting vehicles sunk in river, $12 million in vehicles resting on river bottom in 4 to 6 meters of water. Underwater recovery was impossible due to depth, current, ice conditions, and danger. Vehicles remained permanently on bottom, becoming underwater graves for crews trapped inside. 5 additional BMPs were destroyed by artillery on riverbanks, $2.6 million in losses. 4 BMPs damaged but repairable required extensive overhaul. Personal equipment was total loss. Weapons, radios, night vision devices, body armor, winter gear all sunk with vehicles or abandoned during desperate escape attempts. Items surfacing downstream weeks later were damaged beyond repair. Personnel losses represented strategic catastrophe beyond equipment. 302 soldiers killed or died from wounds, experienced mechanized infantry trained over many months. Training investment exceeded $12 million, completely wasted. Replacement required recruiting new personnel, 9 months training, unit integration, but replacing combat experience was impossible. Many deceased had previous combat rotations and specialized qualifications. Units would operate at reduced effectiveness for years. Operational impact was immediate and severe. Mechanized force destruction eliminated divisions' breakthrough capability. Planned offensive operations dependent on establishing bridgehead were canceled. Alternative operations required complete replanning, consuming 3 weeks. Delay that allowed Ukrainian forces to reinforce threatened sectors. Potential breakthrough became stalemate. Additional casualties from failed subsequent operations numbered in hundreds. Recovery attempts consumed weeks with minimal success. Ice-cutting equipment, diving teams, heavy machinery were deployed attempting to recover bodies and vehicles. Conditions were too dangerous. 4 recovery personnel died from hypothermia and drowning during attempts. Eventually, operations were abandoned. Only 12 bodies were recovered. Remaining victims stayed entombed in vehicles on river bottom. Total immediate losses exceeded $50 million. Vehicles, equipment, training investment, replacement costs. Ukrainian operation cost $107,000. Surveillance, artillery ammunition, planning. Return ratio exceeded 460 to 1. Every dollar invested destroyed nearly $500 of enemy capability. Strategic implications rippled through entire army group. Soldiers became terrified of frozen river crossings, regardless of ice measurements. Some units refused orders citing unsafe conditions, even when ice was adequate. Trust in leadership collapsed. Soldiers questioned commanders who ordered obviously suicidal operation. Morale degradation affected 3 divisions. Combat effectiveness decreased 25% for months. Winter river crossing operations were eliminated from planning entirely. Alternative methods required vulnerable bridge construction. Operational mobility decreased significantly. Ukrainian forces reinforced all river crossing sites, forcing predictable movements into strongest defenses. The disaster demonstrated deadly combination of environmental conditions, engineering analysis, and artillery precision. Ice appeared adequate from surface, but internal structure was fatally compromised by currents and temperature variations. Artillery fractured weakened ice at precise moment, causing catastrophic failure. Vehicles plunged through, crews drowned trapped inside. Survivors faced hypothermia in -21-degree conditions. Recovery was impossible. Bodies remained frozen. Equipment stayed submerged. Financial costs were immediate, $50 million in direct losses. Human costs extended beyond numbers. Families received bodies months later, if at all. Units lost experienced personnel, irreplaceable in short term. Morale damage affected operations for months. Comparative analysis showed operations succeeded beyond Ukrainian expectations. Minimal investment destroyed entire mechanized force. Natural conditions weaponized through careful analysis. Artillery timing was perfect. Ice structural failure was total. Escape was impossible. Result was mathematical. Concentrated force on compromised ice equals mass casualties and equipment loss. 534 personnel entered operation, confident in ice assessments and mission success. 23 minutes later, mechanized force ceased to exist. 234 drowned in vehicles. 68 died from exposure and injuries. Survivors were shattered physically and psychologically. 23 vehicles rested on river bottom unrecoverable. Bridgehead was never established. Offensive was canceled. Division lost breakthrough capability. Russian command learned brutal lesson about winter river operations. Ice thickness measurements were unreliable without structural analysis. Visual inspection was inadequate. Environmental conditions created vulnerabilities exploitable by enemy with proper engineering knowledge and artillery coordination. Natural phenomena became tactical weapons when properly understood and leveraged. Ukrainian forces demonstrated sophisticated integration of environmental analysis, intelligence collection, and precision fires. Ice structural assessment identified hidden weaknesses invisible to Russian reconnaissance. Surveillance tracked crossing preparations. Artillery timing maximized vehicles on ice before triggering collapse. Execution was flawless. Results exceeded conventional engagement effectiveness by enormous margin. The frozen river that night appeared as natural crossing point, solving bridge vulnerability problem. Ice thickness seemed adequate. Route avoided fortified positions. Surprise seemed achievable. Instead, it became perfectly prepared kill zone, where physics and explosives combined, creating inescapable trap. Natural bridge became death trap. Frozen surface became gravesite. Clear night became scene of mass drowning and freezing. No tactical brilliance could overcome ice structural failure. No courage could survive drowning in armored vehicle. No training prepared soldiers for plunging through ice into freezing water while trapped in sinking BMP. Individual actions were irrelevant against environmental physics weaponized through enemy engineering and artillery. Modern warfare demonstrated again that understanding and exploiting natural conditions creates force multiplication exceeding technological advantages. Ice was weapon, temperature was weapon, water depth was weapon, artillery was trigger, but environment was killing mechanism. Ukrainian investment was minimal, but environmental exploitation was devastating. The night was clear and bitterly cold. The drowning was chaos and terror. Ice fractured, vehicles plunged, crews drowned, survivors froze. Bodies remained trapped. Equipment stayed submerged. Force was destroyed. Mission failed. Costs were catastrophic. Lessons were written in frozen corpses on river bottom and traumatized survivors who would never forget watching comrades drown in darkness beneath ice. The night was clear and cold. The drowning was not. Every element was calculated exploitation of natural vulnerability. Frozen river was trap. Ice thickness was illusion. Artillery was trigger. Physics and temperature were executioners. Result was complete mechanized force destruction in 23 minutes.